Good morning, everybody. My name is Catherine Connolly, and I'm the Community Relations and Engagement Coordinator with Seniors NL. Welcome to Let's Talk About SucSeed, Hydroponic Growing. I'll introduce our guest speakers in a few minutes. Sign language interpretation for our Let's Talk About sessions are supported by the Disability Policy Office, Department of Seniors, Youth, and Social Development, to whom we are greatly thankful for. Before we go ahead and begin, as always, there's a few housekeeping tips. Please mute your mic to block out any outside noise. Closed captioning button is on the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions and comments in the chat. However, we will be having a question and answer period at the end of our presentation where you can ask your questions directly over to Sydney and Emily. This session is being recorded. And if you have any suggestions or recommendations for future presentations, please don't hesitate to reach out. And Barb, can you go ahead, please, and read our land acknowledgement?
Good morning. We respectfully acknowledge the land on which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, whose culture has now been erased forever. We also acknowledge the island of Ukta-Umbuk as the unceded traditional territory of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq. And we acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu of Nitassinan and the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and the Inuit of Nunatuavut. We recognize all First Peoples who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As First Peoples have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all.
Thank you, Barb.
You're welcome.
Now, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers for today. So while I'm reading out their introduction, I am actually going to stop my sharing. If I can find it. There we go. So Sydney and Emily, you can go ahead and start to bring up your slides. So Sydney Rice is an education lead for SucSeed, a hydroponic education company in St. John's. Born and raised in Mount Pearl, Sydney started her agricultural journey quite young and has been farming for 13 years on the island. Growing everything from petunias to potatoes, Sydney has a vast experience in growing a variety of different species and loves to share her knowledge whenever possible. With a passion about plants and the planet, teaching and learning about how we can protect nature is a passion for Sydney. Emily Bland is a social entrepreneur with an horticultural heart. She is a third-generation farmer from rural Newfoundland and Labrador and is the current CEO of SucSeed, a hydroponic social enterprise that is on a mission to help the world grow. Previous to this, she completed the Commerce program at Memorial. While pursuing her degree, she was part of the Enactus Memorial team. Through Enactus, SucSeed was founded. SucSeed designs and builds hydroponic gardens that are built by youth experiencing homelessness in partnership with Choices for Youth. SucSeed has gardens in over 1,200 schools, educating over 30,000 students every year, over 2,000 homes, and over 200 community groups across Canada. In 2021, SucSeed became the first B Corp in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I'm going to pass it over to you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having us today. Myself and Sydney are very excited to be joining you this morning to share a little bit about SucSeed and all things growing. So we're excited to be here today. So SucSeed actually started through Enactus. So it was actually a volunteer project through Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador, We were a team of 30 students who really wanted to do something to make a difference in some of the rural northern communities that many of us were from or had done work in. And one of the biggest challenges we had seen was accessing fresh produce, the cost of fresh produce, and not being able to grow it using traditional methods. So we decided to design a hydroponic garden that could allow people to grow fresh produce no matter where they were or what circumstances in which they faced. So back in 2017, we designed our first prototype and actually partnered up with Choices for Youth, an incredible organization based in St. John's that works with at-risk and homeless youth in order to provide them with the supports that they need in order to get back on their feet. So if you're familiar with Choices, they run quite a few social enterprises now. However, we're proud to say that we were the first one that they had started with. They also have Crust. They have a secondhand store now. So a lot of great initiatives that are giving youth opportunities to get back on their feet and transition into other forms of employment. Next slide. SucSeed is also Newfoundland and Labrador's only B Corp. So B Corp is the gold standard when it comes to having a social and environmental impact in your communities. It actually was from going through a year-long audit process where they looked through everything from who our suppliers were, how we treated our stakeholders, how we treated employees. Did we have a recycling program? Did we carpool to work? They look at every aspect of your business and make sure that you're operating as sustainably as possible. So we are quite proud to have received that certification and have held it now for almost 3 years. So SucSeed so far. We started working in rural northern communities back in 2017 and then quickly realized that food security isn't just a problem in northern communities, it's a problem across many parts of Canada. So we actually started in education systems, working with organizations, working with seniors, with people of all ages. We recognize and acknowledge that the problem of food security is something that's going to take all of us in order to overcome. So we started partnering with schools, community groups, and really just trying to get everyone growing. Unfortunately, the stats that were in my bio, I forgot to update beforehand. But right now, SucSeed is actively working with 2,000 schools across Canada, working with about 40,000 students every single year. And then we're working with 100 northern, rural, and Indigenous communities across Canada, as well as over 100 what we call community partners. So that could be anything from one of the many seniors' homes that we work with, to community organizations, to Let's Talk Science, to Boys and Girls Clubs. We've done programming for a little bit of everyone. These are some of our partners that we've worked with over the past, a lot of names there that I'm sure many of you have noticed, everything from working with the Janeway to public libraries to the Unawake Foundation to Brilliant Labs. The core of SucSeed is empowering people and other organizations to take whatever growing path it is that they want. Our job and our goal is to help you grow. And whether that's growing herbs in your countertops, or it's growing large scale gardens. We've done setups with 30, 40, 50 gardens. We're here to help and support. So we're going to jump right in with some of the types of hydroponic systems. So just like people, they come in all different shapes and sizes, from wick systems to deep water culture, to aeroponics to ebb and flows. Some of the most popular ones that you'll see are deep water culture. So that would be the one on the top left-hand side, which is actually what we use in our SucSeed gardens as well. So the basin that you see there, the black box, we fill that completely with water. We have an air bubbler at the bottom of the garden that provides oxygen and water to the roots, and then it's cycled through. And now I'm going to pass it over to Sydney on our team to share a little bit more about the difference between traditional and hydroponic growing.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Sydney. I'm going to be speaking today a little bit about the types of gardening you can do. I have worked on many farms, but I also am a apartment liver, so I am quite well versed in small space growing as well as growing in larger spaces. So we are going to go over all of that today. Even if you just have a small space on a patio, you can absolutely grow, and we're going to go over how you can successfully do that today. So traditional gardening often requires daily watering. It depends heavily on the outdoor weather. We all know that here in Newfoundland that sometimes we can get an earlier season and we can start, say, in May or June, but sometimes it is really cold and we don't start until July. So that is one downfall of traditional gardening, is that you just are so dependent on weather. Another thing is that you do need to do soil testing if you are growing in the ground, and do soil maintenance. So this isn't as big of a deal if you're doing container gardening, because often that soil is just recycled at the end of the year. People just kind of dump them out and you're getting fresh soil every year. But if you are growing in the ground, it is suggested that you do take a testing of your soil and make sure that all the nutrients are up to date on that there. And it's really easy to retill your soil and put more nutrients back into it. And we'll go over all of that as well today. Hydroponic gardening, on the other hand, they only require weekly top-ups of water, so you don't need to go in daily and constantly check on the plant. It's also not weather dependent where it's grown indoors or in a sheltered facility. You add your liquid nutrients to the water, so you never have to wonder if you are having the exact amount of nutrients. In our systems, it comes in a little bottle and it's 6 capfuls for a full bin. So you know you have exactly the nutrients you need. They also grow 40% faster in hydroponics, which is a really cool fact. And they also use 90% less water. That's because the water is being recycled through the system constantly. We're not losing any to the ground or evaporation or to other plants. So everything is kind of being used for the plant right there in the system. So our kits, they actually come with everything you need to grow for an entire year. It comes with your nutrients, your air stone, like Emily was talking about, that little blue thing at the bottom. That's actually going to help your plants so that they don't drown. So I'm sure, as some of you may know, some of you may not, plants actually need air to breathe. So if you don't have any air in there, especially if they're growing in water, then they actually will drown. So you need a little bit of oxygen just to help that root growth really take off. And we actually switched a few years ago from a 2-inch to a 4-inch air stone, I believe it is. And we noticed a huge difference in growth there as well. So the more air that was in there, the better that the plants did. The nutrients are really easy because they're all labeled there on the bottle. It has absolutely everything in there. It has all the simple and complex nutrients that all the plants need. Of course, you also get your seeds. So we usually provide 6 different types of seeds. We'll provide kale, tomatoes, basil, lettuce, spinach, and a pepper. And then you have pH strips. Those are used to test your water. Those net pots they use to support the plant in the rock wool. And the rock wool is actually a soil medium. So hydroponics don't use any actual soil. They use just soil medium. So it can be something like rock wool. Another item we use are called clay pellets. So rock wool is compostable. So it's actually made from rocks. So if you go out in your backyard, see one of those, a big rock out in the yard, they actually take those into these big facilities. They will heat them up, spin them really fast, and then this wool comes off of them, and that is essentially what rock wool is. The clay pellets are dehydrated and really compressed clay. Those ones are actually a reusable product, so you just need to rinse them with warm water between uses. And here are some photos. We always love photos around here of some growing. So we have some students there growing lettuces. We have some students starting out, so it's always really fun getting to plant because it is so accessible. We've done tons of sessions with all different levels of children, and where everything is just all on kind of like chest level if you put it up on a desk, or you can have it down on the floor. It's really accessible, even if you have a special needs class or something where the children aren't as dexterous as other children their age. still super easy to plant. Very, very user-friendly product for sure. And we have some more little smiling faces and some growth. We always love to see that. We also love these little microgreen kits because they are perfect for super small spaces. So these are just the size of a mason jar. It has a little net pot in it and these little peat discs. So the peat discs will go right in and you'll put your seeds on top. And then in probably 8 to 10 days, you'll actually have microgreens you can eat. So these are actually more nutritiously dense than lettuce. And I find that they taste better personally. You can grow all different types. You can grow beet, you can grow arugula ones, you can grow asparagus ones, or not asparagus, sorry, spinach ones if you wanted to. So there's all sorts of types you can get. Some are peppery, some are sweet, and I find that they're just a much better alternative than getting that lettuce in the grocery store that's already half wilted, and it's just not the best bang for your buck. So farming nowadays actually has a lot of technological advances that I'll go over as well. If you go to your local farm near you, you're probably going to see a lot of these things happening now. Farming has changed a lot in the last 15 years. So we actually have harvesting robots around now. They can harvest grapes, tomatoes, carrots, pretty much anything. And they have a little eye on their on the robot so that they can tell the color. So it's really, really cool. They can just pick exactly what they need to. And a lot of the times, no humans actually step foot in these greenhouses. It's all just robots, and that also helps with pests. So sometimes if you're growing in a greenhouse, if you're outdoors, a lot of little pests can actually stick onto your clothing. And if you walk into the greenhouse, it can actually hop off onto the plants. So that's just another protection that a lot of farmers have. They also have weeding robots. We all hate weeds around here, I know. Weeding robots are a great help for farmers. It cuts down on the time that they have to spend out in the fields taking all those weeds out in order to plant. So those are really useful too nowadays. They also have watering robots that you can control from your cell phone. So those are really awesome. Makes life a lot easier for farmers nowadays. And then they also have livestock robots. These are probably the most complicated to integrate into farming. Right now, Lester's there on Brookfield Road, their dairy barn actually has integrated these livestock robots 5 years ago now, and they are so cool. The cows are actually trained just like dogs. They get a little bit of a treat as they go in, and now pretty much all the cows are fully trained. They line up. It's so funny. They look like little school children. They all line up to go into the milker, and it's really a lot of pressure for them if they're not milked constantly. So they know exactly when they want to be milked. They'll line up, get their milk, get their feed, and then they'll just go on about their day. So it's really easy for the farmers, really stress-free for the cows, and it's just a great advancement that's been made in farming recently. So what everybody is excited for are tips and tricks for growing. So container growing is something that I really love. Living in an apartment, I have found that sometimes you just aren't able to, dig up your area. Sometimes you just don't have the space. So containers are great because they can be moved around if you need to. You limit your time having to weed, which is so great. Often when you have container gardening, everything is just in your bucket. So you don't need to worry about weeds from the previous year kind of growing in there. You don't have to worry about if your plants are too close together, really, because once they're in their container, you'll be able to tell how close together they are and if they're too close. So if you have a container, say about this big, you should probably only put about 3 lettuces in it. If you put more than that, you will see with your own eyes, you will notice that your lettuces are getting really small. They're kind of straggly. So oftentimes it actually is better to pick out and just leave so many there. Just leave the 3 instead of having 6 straggly ones, have 3 really healthy ones. So that's one really good tip for container gardening is less is often more. So I usually only say unless you have like a big fish tub, you probably should only be going with 2 to 3 heads of lettuce, and maybe probably 6 carrots if you want to do something under the ground. Things like potatoes, they will often need a lot more space and they need a lot more care, but they still can be done in containers. Really easy. I've done it before myself. The thing that you have to worry about with the potatoes is 1 potato will actually give you 1 pound of potatoes. So 1 seed potato, you just have to do your research, I guess, as you're deciding what seeds you want to plant. Because when you have your potato, you only want to put one of those seed potatoes down into your container, because otherwise you're going to end up with a bunch of really tiny potatoes and nothing really sizable. But then when you're, like I said, with lettuce or something like that, you could definitely do 3 in the container and that would be totally fine. These could also be put up on benches and things like that. So that will be a lot better for accessibility. And they're often pretty heavy. So usually like a 2-man lift is great for those, having a friend with you. Those are all great options. You can also grow herbs this way, which is awesome. And you can bring them indoors when it starts to get cold out. So if you have basil that you really love and you love having it in the winter, you can actually take your basil plant from outside and bring it inside and kind of baby it inside for the whole winter and bring it back outside after. So there's tons of options with container growing just because it's so movable and accessible. And it's just a really great way to get started. You can also actually regrow a lot of vegetables that you buy in the grocery stores. So there are, by using the roots or some of the pieces that are left over, you can actually regrow full-on pieces of vegetables. Green onions is the most common one that a lot of people know about. So if you get green onions at the grocery store, I haven't bought green onions in probably 3 years because I just keep regrowing mine. The biggest thing with the regrowing hacks is you have to change out your water weekly. So that's the most important thing. Other than that, it is very, very simple to do the green onions. You just put the ends that you don't even use anyway into some water and just let it go. The only thing you need to remember is to change that water out once a week. And other than that, they will just take off and you can keep reusing them as many times as you want. They won't die off or anything as long as you keep changing the water. They'll just keep growing new greenery out through the center. Herbs is another really fun one. I love this one because you can always share with your friends, especially if you're doing container gardening or hydroponics and you want to share the wealth. If you take a clipping of any herb, it works with all of them. Works with rosemary, works with basil, it works with thyme, mint. You actually take a clipping and you'll strip the leaves from the bottom 3 inches of the plant, of the cutting that you have. You'll put that in some water, and then in probably 1 to 2 weeks, you will notice that there's some roots growing, and you can either leave it in the water and just let it become kind of a hydroponic little guy and let it live there like that, or you can transfer it into a pot and you can have a new soil grown plant. If you want it to grow a lot bigger and have a lot more, I would suggest putting it in the soil, because then it has a lot more space to grow. It has a lot more nutrients and it'll become a lot stronger. In the water, it's still going to grow great and you'll regrow leaves and things, but it probably won't actually grow into like a big bushy plant. Lettuce is another really fun one. A lot of the times now you can find hydroponic lettuce in the grocery store. And if you take those bottoms, they always leave the roots on them. You can actually pop that into some water and you'll notice you'll have some little leaves growing back up. You won't get a full head of lettuce in the 4 to 5 weeks, but you will get enough to like put on a sandwich, put like on the top of a salad as a few extra leaves. So those are really great. And you can also do it with soil grown lettuce as well. So once the base is cut off, if you put that base into water, then you'll notice some little roots will start coming out of the bottom and your lettuce is actually going to stay a lot firmer. So usually when I bring lettuce home, I actually either wrap it in a really damp paper towel around the bottom, or I'll actually put it in a full-on glass of water and it stays fresh for 2 to 3 weeks. Even if it's just a soil grown one that comes from, Mexico or the US and has these big, long journeys to make before getting to us. Does anybody have any questions?
So I don't see anything here in the chat
Yes,
just yet for
I do have a question.
questions.
Sorry. Oh, I have a
No,
question. Question is, uh, inside the house, in my house, I have a sunroom. So can I use some of these growth in a sunroom on the top of the table there?
Absolutely. A sunroom is amazing for I find the temperatures often pretty consistent where it's inside the house and all that sun coming in, you'll be able to do all of this. You could probably even start off some container growing ones early if you wanted to. So you could probably start them off in like May or early May. Early May, you could probably start them off.
Okay. Second question is, we already have some flower pots in the sunroom. So can this be put along with the flower pots, or the flowers have to be separate away from that?
Yeah, you certainly can put them in the same area. The only thing I would be aware of is sometimes flowers tend to attract pests a little bit more. So I would just keep an eye on that just to make sure that there's no pests jumping from plant to plant. But other than that, I find flowers and herbs grow well together, especially actually if you grow marigolds, they're actually a natural pest deterrent. So if you grow some of those amongst your flowers and your herbs, you'll actually notice there's a lot less pests.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome.
One tip on the sunroom. I know my grandmother had a bit of trouble with it at the start, but make sure you water the plants heavily where they have access to so much sun, but not getting kind of any of the rain that you would outside. Always make sure, especially at the start, that you are checking to make sure the soil is still damp, or growing hydroponically, make sure that you're checking your water level as well.
Absolutely. Great point.
Okay, we do have a question there in the chat. It says, any impact on herbs that have been refrigerated in terms of including growing? And then the second part of that question is, how do hydroponic plants pollinate when not outside?
Oh, great question. So I'll start with the pollination one first. Usually what we'll do, there's two methods. So big farmers, big greenhouses, they often will take a beehive and they will actually put it in the greenhouse. That's a really, really common. So you can definitely have that method. I know a lot of people, you need to watch that to make sure that it doesn't get too warm in there. But that's of course for large scale growing. If it's just yourself or like a class or something, we often say hand pollination is one of the best ways to do it. So either using your pinky or using a Q-tip, you can just touch it from plant to plant and that'll be enough to pollinate it. Another thing you can do is use put some of those mini fans in there, and that will actually create like a nice breeze going through. And that's one of the natural elements that outside would help pollinate as well. And sorry, what was the first question there?
The first question was, any impact on herbs that have been refrigerated in terms of including growing? So if I was to go out and buy the fresh herbs in the produce section in the grocery store, can I actually strip that off, like say 3 inches from the bottom, like you recommended with the greenery, put it in water? Will that grow?
So you're going to be 50-50. If you buy it from a farm that's local, then you will have a better chance. It's all about the time since it's been cut. So if it comes on the truck, say from the US, it's probably going to be there for like 3 weeks. But if I went to Green Farms NL and got their basil, then it's only cut probably that morning. So that one would have a lot better of a chance. So it's more less about the temperature still is a factor. It will lessen the plant's chances of being able to reproduce just because the stomatas are all closed off at that point and it's really not going to have much water uptake. But if you do get it from a farm, you'll have a much higher chance, even if it is refrigerated, because it is so fresh.
Okay. So while you're on that topic, talking about that, you mentioned about purchasing lettuce that you could potentially, we always cut off the bottom part of the lettuce, and discard it. And I'm thinking about older days when I used to work in a flower store, when anytime we changed the water on our flowers, we would actually cut off the bottom to make sure that it didn't seal over so the water's going up freshly in the stems.
Yeah.
Should we actually cut a little bit of the bottom off, say for the lettuce, or just leave it like it is? If we wanted
Initially,
to,
that's
yeah.
yeah, that's a great question. Initially, I always do a little trim, but after that, I leave it. I tend to go through my veggies pretty quick, so I find that um by the time I have like my new leaves and stuff up, it's no real bother for me to go cutting off the bottom again. Um, but yeah, that's a great question. I do wonder if it would make a difference, but I will actually write that down to try it out because I wonder if I after my first regrowth, if I recut it, if the regrowth the second time would be better.
Yeah, because I mean that was one of the rules of thumb, when you work in a flower store, when you change out your
Yeah,
water on your fresh cut flowers, you always take a little tiny bit off the bottom because it does seal over. So the same question
it
actually applies
does.
to the
Yeah.
herbs in the mason jars. When we change over the water, should you cut a little bit off the bottom?
No, because the herbs will actually grow new roots.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're producing a whole new root system that are very large. Like you'll be able to see them within like a week. You'll see the little
Mm,
white roots just kind of spreading out. The lettuce is a bit different because it will get tiny, tiny little roots, but nothing bigger. So I'm thinking the lettuce is probably closer to the flowers than the other produce is.
okay. So if I wanted to go out, because I'm really interested in the mason jars for the herbs.
Yes, yeah.
So, where's the best to start that off freshly? What's the best place to start or to go to pick up the herbs? Would it obviously it's not going to be from a seed,
So for the microgreen ones or for the cuttings?
both.
The cuttings, I would go to your local farm. A lot of
Okay.
farms actually have added hydroponics to them. I know Lester's has hydroponics right now. Green Farms NL has lots of hydroponics. They're a full-on hydroponic farm. Out in Springdale, Papa's Farms has some out there. Um, I'm sure there's somebody on the West Coast as well who probably has some hydroponics going on right now. I know there's a couple greenhouses out there. So that's where I go for the cut ones, just
Okay.
because oftentimes you might even find a farmer who's like, oh, you just want to experiment with this. Come out to the greenhouse, see what I'm doing, and they might just cut you off a piece, and just give it to you for experimentation. But that's your best bet for having success because it's so fresh. Now for the seeds,
Your
oh,
microgreens.
yes. Yes, your microgreens. You start those right from seed. So you'll still get them in the 10 days. And my coworker actually just made a really good point. You can actually buy those fresh plants that are in the grocery store. Like you get the pot in the soil of basil and stuff. You can take that as well and take a snip and put it right in your water as well. So that will also work if you don't have access to a farm.
Okay. And you mentioned on one of your slides you had the microgreen kits there. So they could
Yeah,
actually be purchased from you guys?
you certainly can. I'll just flick back to it there for you all. So we have the jars, the seeds that come with them. We have a variety of ones we do. We do these class kits, which are really cool. If you had like a community group or something that you wanted to start this out with, it comes as like that little pack there, right in the center of the slide there,
Mhm.
and that comes with everything you need to grow. That one's a DIY kit, so you provide your own cup, which is great because a lot of times we find teachers will have like leftover like fruit cups or leftover other things so the kids can learn recycling at the same time, or adults because everybody has a little jar around or something like that. So those ones are great if you want to do like a large group. You can purchase the kit and then it comes with everything. They just need to provide their own cups and you need to provide water. That's all.
And can I ask how much those kits are?
Yeah, those ones are on right now for 99,
We do
99, and that comes with 30.
the
Okay.
$99.99 comes with 30 of the kits. So it's enough
Yes.
for a full class, full group. And if you have a little bit more, a little bit less, we can definitely adapt that as well. And typically, if you know myself and Sydney, we'll also throw in a session if you want someone to actually come in and do the whole setup with you. We've done that with quite a few of the seniors groups across the province now.
Perfect.
Yeah, we always love it. If you're in the St. John's area, we can absolutely do them in person. Otherwise, we definitely do virtual ones. We offer them for a whole plethora of things.
Good to know. We have another question in the chat. For light exposure to help with photosynthesis, possibly to combine solar, is it possible to combine solar power from greenhouse and other energy and hydroponic? And then it says, and what happens during power failure?
That's a great question. So with deep water culture, the power failure isn't detrimental to the system. Unfortunately, for some of these systems, it would be
Gardening from
detrimental.
Hydroponic Gardening from Newfoundland. It's a big company
Oh.
that's
Go ahead.
Oh, so with these here, the deep water culture, if you had a failure, the plants could survive probably 3 days. After that, you would start to see signs of damage to the plants because they would start exhibiting symptoms of like drowning. The aeroponics, you would see your plants, unfortunately, probably shrivel up within a day just because the misters are constantly going and they're the only thing providing water. Ebb and flow would be probably around the 3-day mark as well, because what that one does is it fills up the top table and then it sinks it back down. So you still would have some moisture there, I think enough to last you a few days, but you wouldn't want to let it go more than a week. Nutrient film technique, unfortunately, I think you would have a full failure with that one as well because you are pumping it up and it's running down, so the plants wouldn't get any water. Same with the dripper system because unfortunately, the drippers need to be dripping constantly into the systems. Wicking system is the only one that doesn't require any energy, which is very cool. So that one would actually be completely fine.
Okay. Another question is, this individual has a tap water system. She said it's complicated. How do I ensure safe water in my plants?
That is great. So, what I actually do with a lot of my plants, I have a very large houseplant collection as well. And often I find that if you have harder water or like on town water, if you put it into, well, first of all, it's very important to test just to make sure you don't have anything, like really, really detrimental to your plants in your water. But I wouldn't say you would. Even people on wells, they don't have, big issues. But if you put them in a container, like if you have a big wine bottle or a water bottle, keep the top off of it. And that will actually help. I think it's the chlorine that evaporates out of it. And a couple of other minerals will evaporate out of it. Just give it a few days and then use that bottle to water all your plants.
Okay. Did not know that. Thank you so much. Great questions. I have to say, keep the questions coming. I did have a couple of questions that were asked during registration, but before I read those out, I just want to open this up to say, does anybody want to take their self off mute to ask a question?
Sydney, where are you people located?
Where am I located? I'm located in St. John's, Newfoundland.
Yeah, but where in St. John's?
Do you have an office in St. John's?
We do, yeah. Our office is on Bond Street.
Oh, Bond Street. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So we're not open to the public, but we do. If you want to come down for a chat or a visit or something like that, we could certainly arrange for you to come down for a meeting, or we could arrange for a call, whatever is easiest for you guys.
Oh, so you just are a consultant, or you can provide all the equipment and everything to set it up in the sunroom or wherever, it's small.
Yeah, we certainly have all the equipment as well. So we do have on our website an option for pickup in St. John's as well, so that you don't have to do any shipping. But if you'd ever like us, to help you with your whole setup or like any advice, we'd absolutely be able to do that. You can shoot us an email and we can get connected, and I'll have all my my emails there. I'm sure that they'll be sent out by Catherine.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question in the chat box. I only got one. It says, where can I buy close to Elmville in Ontario? I'm interested in growing carrots this spring.
Are you looking for seeds in Elmville?
I don't know, this is a lady, if she wants to open up and talk about it. That's all this in the chat box.
All good.
Okay.
Well, what I would suggest, there's often lots of like little seed stores. The one that I find does best, it's called Napoli. It comes in these little, so the other thing about it is you should get pelleted seeds. Those are the best ones for
Okay.
beginners. So pelleted seeds have a little coating on them. And what's great about pelleted seeds versus unpelleted seeds is they're a lot more forgiving for new growers. So if you forget to water for a day, or maybe if you overwater it a little bit, the coating on it will be a lot more forgiving and it'll just dissolve away. And then your seeds will have a lot better chance of starting off. I also find they're a lot easier to pick up because carrot seeds are so incredibly tiny that often they're really hard to place exactly where you want to. For those of you who may have people who have mobility issues, you can also get those same seeds on seed tape. So the seeds are actually spaced out exactly how far they should be. You just unroll the tape and you put the tape down into the ground and then it's done. The tape is biodegradable and then you have everything there. It's super easy. You don't need to be picking up these teeny tiny seeds all the time. And then it's all in a straight line, which is another bonus.
Thank you so much. We did have a question there saying, can we get your website? Somebody, the posting for the website was just put in the chat itself. However, when I follow up with everybody with the link to this session, this recorded session, I will have the SucSeed's website in that email for you as well. Anybody else have a question that they would like to go ahead and ask? Okay, so I'm going to actually read out some of the questions that we had during registration. First question is, how much are the kits? And second part of that question was, and do you do programming in Western Newfoundland and Labrador for the public libraries?
Awesome. So for the public libraries, we have been in chats with the public library head office here in St. John's by the AC Hunter Library. So they have actually started, I believe they got as far as Clarenville right now, but they are in talks with people on the West Coast. I was talking to Sarah yesterday, and I do believe they are going to send them out there, but it won't be until closer to the summertime. So right now, CBS has them, Clarenville has them, and Carbonear has them, but they are slowly making their way across the island. So hopefully they will get all the way over there by the summertime so that everybody over on the West Coast can enjoy them as well. And our kits, the Educator All-in-One, which comes with the light stand and everything, those ones are $499.99. And then we also have a Grow Garden starter kit. That one doesn't come with the light stand, but if you have like a table or a place where you can like hang the light up, we have lots of people who just hang the lights and find that that's like perfect for them. And those ones are $389.99. And so those ones will come with all the non-flowering things, so that it won't include your tomatoes or your peppers, but it will include like your basil, your lettuce, things like that.
And
don't
highly
forget
recommend if you're in the CVS area to check out the setup they have there. They've been growing lots of basils and different herbs and actually allowing the public to take home clippings so you can start growing at home. Myself and Sydney have been down a couple of times and always incredibly impressed with what they have growing there. So if you're in the area, highly recommend you check them out.
You mentioned the CBS area. So what business was this that you're referring to?
The CBS Public Library.
Oh, public library. Sorry about that. I missed that.
Oh, all good. No worries.
Don't forget again that we did mention the microgreen kits. So you said that they were $99.99 for 30 kits, if I'm not mistaken?
For 30, yeah. So it'll give you 30 like packs. So 30 seeds, 30 bags. Yeah.
Okay. We have a chat in the question, which actually goes hand in hand with another question that was asked during registration. It says, for larger installations, do you know if there are any government, federal or provincial or municipality or town provided financial support? So I did actually look into some information on this, and there is funding for community gardens through the Department of Fisheries, Forestry, and Agriculture, which is a provincial initiative. There's no deadline on your submissions. However, applications are processed on a first come, first served basis. I will provide the link to this information again in the follow-up for this call today. And also on February 21st, Seniors and L, we're going to be hosting another Let's Talk About session, and it's going to be with the Wellness Coalitions of Newfoundland and Labrador. And the Wellness Coalitions, once you become a member, and there's no charge to become a member, you just have to go on their website and indicate that you'd like to join. For anybody that joins them and they're members, they do have, say, small grants that they can give to organizations. So if you're interested in learning more about the Wellness Coalitions of Newfoundland and Labrador and what they do and the different options that they provide, I highly recommend that you join us for February 21st call session. Before I begin going over some of the other questions from registration, does anybody have a question that you'd like to take yourself off mute and ask? Okay, so question for registration, when to put compost in your garden?
Excellent question. So compost is awesome. I usually find that I add my compost in the right after the snow melts and the ground isn't so frosty, just because you will want to mix it through. If you are doing container gardening, then you can actually add your compost as you fill up your bin. So if you've got a 12-liter bin, you're probably only going to want one big handful. If you have a fish tub, you're probably going to want, say, like 3 or 4 handfuls. So it just depends on how much. Your goal is probably 1 to 10. That's the ratio you're going to want with your compost. For containers, in the ground, it's a lot more forgiving because there's a lot more places for the nutrients to go, but you just don't want to overload your containers if you're container gardening.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Sydney or Emily?
I do. Thank you both, first of all, for everything you're sharing with us. And thank you also for answering many of the questions that I've actually asked. But when it comes to the composting, I'm new to composting. And so I just put all the vegetable and fruits and eggshells and all that. But I worry about sort of some items might have higher levels of certain chemicals that could upset, because I don't really know things like pH balance and all of that. So I was just wondering, should I be careful how much of a particular food I put in my outdoor composter, which is pretty much frozen right now. So I'm looking forward to it defrosting and doing whatever it's supposed to do.
Yeah. First of all, I love that you have a composter. That's awesome. I'm a huge advocate for composting. I'm a little bit crazy in my house when it comes to compost. Anytime somebody goes to throw a piece of food, I'm like, no, it's the compost. So for the composter, I find yes, avoiding onions, that's big. And garlic is another one. Even the peels of both of those aren't like the greatest thing for compost. The best things are like the eggshells, the coffee grounds, those are awesome. And making sure that you have a lot of leaf litter and stuff in there as well with it. So just having kind of like making a cake, it's almost like layering. And then when the time comes, if you have one of those turnable bins, that's awesome because you don't need to actually manually turn it over. But if you do manually need to turn it over, the very bottom is where you're going to want to pull from first. But otherwise, you should be good with everything else. The only thing I would avoid, obviously, you can't put like bones or things like that in there. But just, yeah, I'd avoid the onions, the garlic. And too many citrus peels aren't great either. So too many lemon peels or orange peels. Just try to keep an eye on that. But you need quite a few to change the pH for the citrus peels.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you so much for that question. Uh, Again, we're open for questions here now. So if anybody wants to take yourself off mute, please go right ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to say again, the lady who asked the question, she's back on screen now. She wasn't. So I'll just say the question again. Where can I buy close to Elmville, Ontario? I'm interested in growing carrots this spring. So if you want to open up your mic, the lady who asked that question, because this is the second time asking.
That's me,
Yep.
Dolores. I'm sorry, I had a call I had to
No
take.
problem. Thank
No
you.
worries.
Yeah, so I'm just starting in Ontario. We moved from Newfoundland a couple of years ago, and it's only now that I have my ground ready to do anything with. So I'm pretty much new, and I'm wondering, I live in Elmvale, which is close to Barrie and Midland and Wasaga Beach. And I am very much in farming country. So my question is, where close by can I access your systems, or how do you get them in the mail or whatever? How do you transport?
Oh, yes. So we can definitely send systems in the mail. We send them all across Canada. So we send them up north, south of us. So we can definitely get to you that way. As for carrots, were you planning on growing them in the ground?
Yes, I'm hoping to grow them in the ground. Yes.
So I would look around for the best type of carrot I find. It's like a really hardy carrot. It's rust fly resistant as well, which is really awesome. It's called Napoli. You can get them either in pelleted seeds, which are great, very forgiving for new growers, or you can actually get them on seed tape. So you can actually order those from Vessies, but I would bet that there's probably a Vessies retailer really close to you. A lot of local farms are usually Vessies retailers. So if you just pop into their store, they'll have like a big seed selection there. But the tape is awesome because
how do you spell the?
Vessies, yeah, VES.
Oh, I know
BEYS.
that, but the type of the carrot that you said.
Oh, NAPOLI.
OLI. Oh, okay. NAP. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, is seaweed, there's a lot of talk about how good seaweed is in a composter or to use. Can we use seaweed in a composter? And if so, should we rinse off the salt and dry it?
Great question. So I usually put my seaweed on in the fall. That gives it a chance to really sink into your ground. It gives the snow a chance to rinse away the salt naturally because your soil is kind of being concentrated. And then when it's all starting to melt away in the spring, it'll all be decomposed down. It will be you don't need to dry it out completely. I'd maybe give it like a little rinse in a bucket, but honestly, I usually just go down with my bucket to the beach. I'll fill it up, and then I'll just spread it over my entire garden in the fall and leave it. I know that there are some companies who do liquid seaweed, which is really cool. You add it to your water. I think it's like a capful or something to a liter of water. And that's another really great way to use the seaweed nutrients. You can just water that way. And then there's also a company here locally who does seaweed compost. So it's already pre-broken down with a bunch of other compostable materials. And that one I would put on in the springtime where it doesn't need to break down as much. But if you're using just straight seaweed, I would go in the fall and just give it like a little rinse in the bucket. I wouldn't go drying it out or anything like that.
Okay. Question during registration. How can I use this method in my unheated garage soon?
Hydroponics, I'm assuming they're referring to?
I would assume so. That's the question.
So hydroponics 15 degrees Celsius is really kind of the lower end of where you want to be. So if your garage drops any lower than that, I probably would avoid putting it out there. The other issue with garages is unless you have a light, often garages are really dark and dingy. So you would need a grow light to start off. If you want to start off some seeds out there, you'd probably need a grow light and a heat mat. That might be enough, but for an actual hydroponic system, it may be a bit too cold, but you might be able to get away with starting off some plants on a heat mat out there.
Or a heat mat.
Yeah, so they are really cool. They're just, you can get them in all kinds of sizes, and they're surge proof and waterproof as well, so you don't need to worry about watering on them. You can get them from Vessies as well. I find that they're really awesome. We use them at Leicester sometimes if we're starting. We often start off seeds in March, so it's very cold that time of year. So we'll use heat mats up there during that time.
Interesting. Interesting. With very limited space, with SucSeed products, do you suggest to grow microgreens for two? So I'm assuming that means for two people.
You definitely could grow microgreens in the big kit. And as for space, we've had some people grow in their closets where it comes with the light and everything. You just need to make sure that the actual temperature is good enough. So we've had people grow in their closets. We've had people grow under their stairs. So the space issue is really cool with this one because it's not so much of an issue. But for microgreens, you can either grow in the actual jars, or you could grow in the full-on system. The full-on system will probably give it to you a bit quicker, just because all those bubbling and the oxygen is going to speed up the growing a bit more. But I would probably go a jar per person if you're just going with the jars, because I personally like to load up my sandwiches a lot with microgreens. So I usually use like a full jar full on each sandwich.
Mm. How would this entail growing vegetables in a community garden? So you talked about the hydroponic kits that you have and the growing. So think of it more so on a community base where we have a lot of, for example, 50 plus clubs that do have the community gardens. So how would you help with that type of an area, those type of individuals?
We can definitely help with giving advice, with companion planting, for instance. So even out in outdoor gardens, you can still make more of your space by actually planting a slightly different way. So we've been trained as humans to basically plant in rows. So you're planting here, but when you look at nature, nature's not like that. Nature doesn't grow in rows. Nature doesn't, everything's kind of interconnected. So there's a method in indigenous cultures called the Three Sisters method, where you grow corn, you grow beans, and then you grow squash. So the corn will actually grow up really tall. You plant that one first. That acts as kind of the support for the beans to grow around. So the beans will wrap around your corn. That takes up all that space so that you don't have lost space there. And then you have the ground still because all those things are growing up. So you grow your squash on the bottom, and they all work together to provide each other nutrients and things like that. So by using those methods in outdoor gardens and community gardens, you can actually make it so that they're more successful.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any other questions? No? Okay, so I will ask a question. I've been doing container gardening for the past couple of years. Some years I am successful, other years I'm not. I just, last year was not a successful year for me at all. However, every time I have actually tried to grow broccoli, it goes seedy. I can't use it. Why is that?
A lot of the times, broccoli is a cold crop, so it could have been a bit too warm. It's kind of like spinach too. Spinach bolts really fast. You'll see it bolt up and get the seeds. Broccoli is very similar. I thought you were going to say you were having issues with the slugs, because that's one thing that a lot of people have a really big issue with broccoli. And a tip for that is copper wire. You put it around the base of your plant. They absolutely hate it. So if anybody has slug issues, copper wire is your best friend. But other than that, I would maybe try planting it in the ground this year. Maybe that the roots are getting a little bit too warm where it's like up out of the ground. If you have a little bit of space, maybe try it there, or maybe try it in a lower container.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, where I have dogs in the garden that like to dig.
I'm with you on that one. I know all about it.
Exactly, it has to be container gardening. However, now that you're saying about the heat, I think that was my culprit.
Yeah, it
Was
usually
the
is with broccoli.
heat. Yeah, yeah. So with regards to the slug issue, though, I mean, so if you have slugs and you notice them in your garden, you can actually put copper wire around your, say, your flower bed, and that will prevent or help prevent them.
Yeah, so they actually when they can't actually go over the copper wire for some reason, some element in it actually starts to burn them, kind of like the salt. So they
Hmm.
avoid it completely. So if you just take like copper wire, some people use like copper shavings, I've heard, and just like kind of put it through their garden. Some people use rocks from the beach. So just going to the beach and getting the rocks that are really rolled over. They're like ingrained with salt. So people usually go beginning of the season, they'll get brand new, fresh rocks from the beach, and then they'll line their whole gardens with it. So those are two really great methods that don't use pesticides that can help with
Mm.
broccoli.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We have another question in the chat, and this is, I'm having a very hard time growing potatoes to a good size. Any advice? Now, I wrote this down when you were talking about potatoes. So I'm actually going to see if I learned anything, and hopefully I'm going to be right on this. If it's in a container and you're growing potatoes, less is more, because 1 pound of one potato can grow a pound. So is it too much being planted,
Yeah,
possibly?
exactly. It could very well be too much. It could be also that you're not waiting long enough. So when a good indication that your potatoes are actually ready, your potatoes will flower, and you'll think your potato, like the part that's growing above the ground, it'll start flowering, and you'll think, "Oh, that looks ready." But you actually want to wait until they start to almost look dead and then pull your potatoes, because you're actually those flowers are still creating energy that's being brought down into the potatoes. And this is really like their last kind of push to get big. So if you're taking them before the flowers die off and they all fall over and they kind of look a little bit dead, you're not giving your potatoes the maximum amount of energy that they could potentially have to grow. So just leaving it a teeny tiny bit longer. I know it's hard because I'm the same way. I love to pull my potatoes from the ground, but if you wait just a little bit longer, 2 plants and my plants are dying before flower. Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you have, are your 2 plants that are dying before flower the potatoes?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So I think it could be possibly an overwatering issue. Do you have really good draining soil in that area? If you don't, I'm thinking that's probably why. A really good thing you can add, if you get sand, you can actually add sand into your soil and mix it through, and that helps with drainage. Or you can get perlite as well. They're like little tiny white balls. You can mix that through. But I'm thinking it's a drainage issue. That's usually the culprit when it comes to tiny potatoes and dying plants.
Yeah, I did notice last year when I purchased some containers that you put them on your rail, so it sits up top.
Yes.
Yeah, and I actually did notice on the bottom they have the holes there for drainage, but you
Mhm.
actually I had to turn them upside down and actually with very gently with a nail and a hammer to get the holes plugged out because the hard plastic was still attached.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's an issue too. Yeah, if you don't have drainage holes, your plants won't be very happy.
no, and I did notice that. I had the first one planted and then I turned it upside down and I noticed it and I was like, oh no. So I had to, dump everything back out to make sure I had those drainage holes in there.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
I have a question. I have basil growing in the pot, and in the
Yep.
beginning, it grows so well, and that plant becomes quite tall. And suddenly, I see at the back of it those tiny, tiny white, bugs. So I don't know
Oh,
how to get rid of them.
So I would take it away from any other plants that you have right now just to avoid any spreading, and then bring it to your kitchen sink and actually douse it in Dawn dish soap and then put some water over it and really like gently wash all the leaves. And I find that's the best way. If you just have one or two plants, that's definitely the best way to go. If you have a huge colony of them, they're like overtaking, it's almost better to kind of let the plant go. But if it's just a couple in the back, I do the Dawn dish soap.
Okay, all right. Just soapy water, is it?
Yeah, just soapy water and just give it a really good clean, and that'll actually coat the bugs so that they actually suffocate.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually do
Okay,
that
I
quite
had a-
free.
Sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I had another issue last year, or no, 2 years ago now. I was getting a lot of slugs on my cabbage. So I was taking everybody's advice on how to get rid of the slugs, but nothing really worked. I decided to take a net and I put a net over my pots and then took clothespins and closed it all the way around the edges of the pot so that the slugs couldn't get up inside. And that worked really well. But what
Amazing.
happened was my plants went woody.
Oh, gotcha. Do you know if the netting was an agricultural netting?
No, it probably wasn't.
You can actually get this stuff. It's called a floating row cover. So you might see like big farms have their fields covered in it. So it almost looks like water because it's like these big, huge blankets. But you can get them from Vessie's again. I know you can also get them from Halifax Seed. Bunch of local places, and they're great because they're light permeable and they're water permeable. So you can actually do the same method, but then I think probably what happened is maybe they didn't get enough light or airflow, possibly.
Oh, probably light. Because I did have
Probably
them
light.
on
So
my desk.
I'd probably go with the agricultural blanket this year if you can find them. They're usually like not too expensive either. And you can usually get like a big roll and they last for years.
Okay, thank you.
And Catherine, I know that you've just recently came onto the call and you may have missed it, but Sydney actually mentioned too copper wire around the base of your plants or your pots.
Yes, I did hear that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I want to make sure that
Awesome.
you did. Yeah.
Very
Um,
cool advice.
yeah, it is. Absolutely. Anybody who does any gardening will know that I always have issues with the slugs around my plants. Just, my flowering plants, not so much that, I could eat them, but still, no, it is killing the plants. So this is definitely something I'm going to check out this year.
Definitely.
There is a comment, or I should say, a question in the chat, and I'm hoping I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Does neem oil, and NEEM for Nancy,
Yeah.
oil help with those little bugs? And what is neem
It
oil?
absolutely
For those
does.
of us,
Neem oil is so neem oil. I believe it's I'm just gonna look it up to make sure I'm correct because I don't want to tell you the incorrect. Yeah, so it's from the neem tree. Okay, I am correct. So it's from the seeds of the neem tree. So they actually squish down the seeds and get the oil out. And it is a completely natural pesticide. I'm not sure what the qualities in it. I think it's the smell they don't like. It's very similar to marigolds. But neem oil, I actually I have about 100 houseplants, so I'm very paranoid about bugs getting into my collection. So I actually spray them down probably once a month with neem oil. So I just put it into my into a spray bottle and I have it very diluted and I'll just give them all a little bit of a spritz and it's kind of just like a natural pesticide. You can buy it at most local agricultural stores. I know here in St. John's, you can buy it down at Gay Seed. I don't think Vessi sells it online, but it's on Amazon.
But just out of curiosity, do you know if that's pet friendly off the top of your head?
I do not know, but I will.
That's okay. Just thinking, because I mean, every year I do actually spray down some of the plants I have in the garden with soapy dishwater because of a certain little bug that just eats away at the leaves. So I'm just wondering if the neem oil would be something better.
Yeah, it says that it's completely natural and safe for dogs.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
nice. Thank you so much for that question.
Yeah, it's a very cool one. I'll tell you one really cool fact. I'm connected with a few farmers up in Manitoba, and they had issues with that, and they used neem oil and things, but it wasn't really getting all the bugs. They have a huge greenhouse, so they actually got praying mantises in, and they actually took care of the issue for them. So that was very cool to see. They sent me some videos, and the praying mantises just absolutely eat them all. It's very cool.
Wow, that is cool. I tried to grow a Venus flytrap and I was not successful.
Oh, they're
Just to
so
say.
hard.
I was not successful. Any other questions? Comments? Oh, neem oil is also used for your hair. It was said in the chat there a moment
Ooh,
ago.
that's a
Tried
cool
it
fact.
on mine and it was awful for its stink. Took forever to get rid of the smell. Okay, so people don't use a thing because it does smell.
That's probably why the bugs don't like it.
Probably so. Okay, so I'm actually just going to share my screen. And of course, we're still in the questions, everybody. So if you have any other questions, please, this is your time. Can everybody see my screen?
And if you don't feel comfortable asking a question here, you can always shoot me an email. I love to chat about plants. It's my passion. So you can always email myself or Emily, and we would love to chat.
Perfect. Again, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So before I'm going to just move on to a reminder about next week's session on February the 7th. It's going to be with Service Canada. To reminder to everybody on this call that this is a live session only. The session will not be recorded. Okay. And then February the 14th, we have a session on Let's Talk About Tech Now Tutors and Empower. So please keep your eyes and ears open about our sessions that will be coming up. We'll be getting ready to send out our February and March lineup. So very exciting things coming again. So before we end today's call, I'm going to open it up again to anybody that would like any questions, any comments, anything that they'd like to say to Sydney and Emily.
Well, there's a few comments just saying thank you all so much, very much. Oh, I lost that one. That went down. Thank you. Fantastic session. Love this session. Very encouraging to see what is happening in Newfoundland and beyond to help with food security.
Perfect.
Just another one there. It scrolled down without me.
I have to say, I found this session extremely informative. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Sydney and Emily. I mean, the knowledge that you both have is astonishing. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. It was a good session, and you might be getting calls from us.
Absolutely. I'll be looking forward to it.
We have small garden at the back, and we do some kitchen gardening, but sometime it grows well, sometime it doesn't. So you will be getting calls from us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to share all my tips.
Yeah. We like to hear that.
Both Sydney and Emily, the presentation was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is Dolores. My granddaughter is actually moving back to CBS with 2 small kids.
Oh,
She's going to be avid and so delighted to get in touch with the library. Thank you guys so much. Even though I've left Newfoundland, I do some of the seniors things, and I do your recordings for sure. Thank you again.
Thank you
And thank
so
you,
much.
ladies. Thank you, ladies, for coming. I learned a lot. Yeah, I just need to get my confidence up, I think.
Well,
Definitely.
you
Any
know,
questions? Feel free to shoot me an email, Dolores.
I certainly will. Thank you so much, Sydney. Thank you.
and personally speaking for myself, like I say, I try container gardening every year, and sometimes it's a hit or miss, but I don't give up on it. I don't give up, right? There was one of the questions actually, and I'm surprised that nobody asked this. The slides that you shared during this presentation, is that something that you could provide to me to share out to the individuals that are on the call?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that would be fantastic. So when I follow up with everybody with the link to the recording, I'll have a PDF version of the slides that Emily and Sydney shared today, along with the information about the community gardens grant that you could apply for, the website, and of course, if there's anything that you need anything that we've left out of, you can certainly reach out to Seniors NL, and we'd be happy to provide you with the information. So this is the last call. Anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? No? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining today's call. On the screen right now, you'll see Seniors NL information there. If there is anything that you need, anything that we can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day.